Today, we will be looking at two horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. The first story revolves around a small improvisation that proved to be deadly, while the second story is about a birthday party inside the depths of the cave that went terribly wrong. As always, viewer discretion is advised. April 26th, 1999 should have been just another technical diving adventure for Guido Gaudenzi. Instead, it became the day a single moment of confusion created chaos for the 29-year-old in the L waters of Florida's Diepolder Spring. Gaudenzi wasn't a novice. With 4 years of cave diving experience, he understood the complex world of technical diving, where every breath was calculated and every decision could mean life or death. He had trained extensively in mixed gas diving, the advanced technique that allowed divers to explore depths impossible with regular scuba equipment. On this morning, Gaudenzi descended into Diepolder Spring with fellow divers Simone Roncoli and Sandra Dirksen. Their destination was a large underwater chamber located 190 feet down, approximately 58 meters below the surface. At this crushing depth, the water pressure was nearly 6 times greater than at the surface, fundamentally changing how gases affected the human body. The 3 divers carried multiple gas tanks, each containing different mixtures of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium calculated for specific depths. This wasn't recreational diving, where a single tank of air sufficed. Technical diving required precise gas management, where breathing the wrong mixture at the wrong depth could prove instantly fatal. Each diver also carried an oxygen bottle for their final decompression stage. Standard protocol demanded leaving these oxygen tanks at the 20-foot mark, 6 meters below the surface, where pure oxygen was safe to breathe. This wasn't just recommended practice. It was a critical safety measure that prevented deadly mistakes. Pure oxygen becomes toxic at depths greater than 66 feet, 20 meters. Under increased pressure, oxygen concentrations that were life-sustaining at the surface became poison that could cause immediate convulsions and death. Every technical diver learned this fundamental rule, which made what happened next so shocking. Gaudenzi broke protocol. Instead of leaving his oxygen bottle at the designated decompression stop, he decided to carry it with him throughout the dive. Perhaps he wanted to ensure the gas would be available when needed. Or maybe he was concerned about equipment placement. Whatever his reasoning, this decision would prove fatal. The descent went smoothly. The 3 divers moved through the crystal-clear water with practiced efficiency, their lights cutting through the underwater darkness. The limestone formation surrounding them had been carved by millions of years of water flow, creating an otherworldly landscape that few humans ever experienced. At 190 feet, or 58 meters, they reached their destination. The underwater chamber opened around them like a submerged cathedral, its walls disappearing beyond their lights. The crushing water pressure at this depth would have instantly killed an unprotected human, but their specialized equipment allowed them to explore this alien environment. They spent time documenting the chamber, taking photographs, and marveling at the unique geological formations. The silence was absolute except for the rhythmic cycling of their breathing apparatus. In this environment, every breath had to be calculated, every movement considered. After completing their exploration, the team began their ascent. This was the most dangerous phase of any deep dive. The gases dissolved in their blood, and tissues under pressure had to be released gradually to prevent decompression sickness. They would make several stops at predetermined depths, allowing their bodies to safely eliminate excess gas. Their first major stop was at 120 feet, approximately 37 meters below the surface. Here, they would hover motionless for several minutes, beginning the gradual decompression process. The surface seemed impossibly distant above them, and they still had multiple stops ahead before reaching safety. At this 120-foot decompression stop, Gaudenzi made his fatal error. For reasons that would never be fully understood, he switched from his primary breathing gas to the oxygen bottle he had carried from the surface. Perhaps confusion clouded his judgment, or maybe the stress of the deep dive affected his decision-making. The moment pure oxygen entered his lungs at 120 feet, 37 meters underwater, the effects were immediate and catastrophic. The high pressure forced toxic concentrations of oxygen into his bloodstream, triggering what diving medicine calls oxygen poisoning. His central nervous system was overwhelmed by the chemical assault. Gaudenzi went into violent convulsions. His body shook uncontrollably as his nervous system misfired under the oxygen toxicity. Within seconds, he lost consciousness completely, his mind shutting down under the toxic effects. The mouthpiece connecting him to life-sustaining gas fell from his lips, floating away in the clear water. Roncalli and Dirksen watched in horror as their experienced partner transformed from a competent diver into an unconscious victim. At 120 feet, 37 meters underwater, they faced every diver's nightmare, a buddy in distress far from the surface with limited rescue options. The two divers immediately switched into emergency mode. They had trained for this scenario, but reality was far more challenging than any classroom exercise. Gaudenzi was unconscious and convulsing, his body unresponsive to their rescue attempts. Without his mouthpiece in place, he was no longer breathing the gas that kept him alive in the deep water. Roncalli and Dirksen worked frantically to save their friend. They tried to get his mouthpiece back in position, fighting against his uncontrolled movements and the challenging underwater environment. The convulsions made it nearly impossible to maintain proper equipment placement, and their own gas supplies were becoming critical as they expended energy in the rescue attempt. The physics of their situation worked against them. At 120 feet, 37 meters, they were still far from the surface and couldn't attempt rapid ascent without risking fatal decompression sickness themselves. They needed to maintain their own decompression obligations while trying to save Gaudenzi, a nearly impossible task. Minutes passed with the situation becoming increasingly desperate. Gaudenzi showed no signs of regaining consciousness, and the convulsions continued preventing effective rescue breathing. His companions faced the horrible reality that their friend was dying before their eyes, and nothing they could do would prevent it. The tragedy was made worse by how preventable it was. Oxygen toxicity limits were well understood in the diving community. The 66-foot, 20-meter threshold for pure oxygen use was fundamental knowledge drilled into every technical diver. Experienced divers developed specific protocols to prevent exactly this type of accident. Standard practice involved leaving oxygen bottles at appropriate decompression depths precisely to avoid the confusion that killed Gaudenzi. By securing oxygen supplies at 20 feet, 6 meters, divers eliminated any possibility of accidentally breathing pure oxygen at dangerous depths. Technical diving offered no margin for error. Unlike recreational scuba diving, where mistakes often resulted in inconvenience, technical diving errors could be immediately fatal. The combination of extreme depth, complex gas mixtures, and demanding decompression requirements created an environment where single mistakes proved catastrophic. After exhausting every rescue option, Roncalli and Dirksen were forced to accept the inevitable. Gaudenzi had succumbed to oxygen toxicity, and their own survival now depended on completing decompression and reaching the surface alive. They couldn't save him, but they could ensure his death didn't claim additional victims. The ascent must have been agonizing for the survivors. They were forced to complete scheduled decompression stops while dealing with trauma of watching their friend die. Each stop represented precious minutes when Gaudenzi's condition deteriorated, but rushing to the surface meant certain death from decompression sickness. When Roncalli and Dirksen finally surfaced and reported the accident, the diving community was shocked. Gaudenzi's 4 years of cave diving experience should have prevented this fundamental error, highlighting how even skilled divers could fall victim to momentary confusion. Emergency responders recovering Gaudenzi's body from that depth faced their own technical challenges. The recovery operation required specialized deep diving equipment and careful planning to avoid additional casualties. The crystal clear water that had attracted the divers now served as the site of a complex underwater recovery mission. Investigation revealed no equipment failures or external factors contributing to the death. The oxygen bottle functioned perfectly, delivering pure oxygen exactly as designed. The problem wasn't equipment failure, but inappropriate use at depths where pure oxygen became deadly poison. This reinforced understanding that human error causes most diving fatalities. The incident became a case study in technical diving courses worldwide. Instructors used Gaudenzi's death to emphasize the importance of following established protocols, regardless of experience level. The accident demonstrated that expertise couldn't compensate for momentary lapses in judgment when diving at extreme depths. In this next story, an unusual birthday celebration spirals into a disaster no one saw coming. Tracy Harrison had no idea that August 10th, the day she was born, was potentially the day she might die. What began as plans to celebrate her upcoming 39th birthday in Missouri's Martin Cave turned into a devastating tragedy. Martin Cave was privately owned, but accessible to visitors, located in the rolling hills characteristic of Missouri's Ozark region. The Current River, a national scenic riverway, flowed through the area, its clear waters sparkling as they passed beneath the thick forest. This region was famous for its many caves, formed by the unique karst landscape that Missouri is known for. To reach the entrance of Martin Cave, travelers would follow the river, as it provided one of the main routes to the cave's entrance, winding through the natural beauty of the surroundings. The river's path through this rugged, cave-filled area was a key way to access the cave and explore the landscape. Tracy and her friends used this cave as their party venue. The privately owned cave offered complete privacy and natural air conditioning from Missouri's blazing summer heat. The constant underground temperature of around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, around 16 degrees Celsius, was perfect relief from the oppressive humidity outside. This wasn't a planned caving expedition. The group brought coolers, snacks, beverages, and portable speakers for an underground birthday party. They wanted something unique and memorable, and the cave's natural acoustics seemed perfect for their celebration. The group entered the cave using flashlights and battery-powered lanterns. They ventured about 228 meters, 750 feet, into the system until they found a wider chamber suitable for their party setup. The limestone walls created impressive acoustics that amplified their music and conversations. As they unpacked supplies and set up their celebration, the mood was festive and relaxed. The novelty of partying underground added excitement to the gathering. Music played from speakers while they arranged their food and drinks in the underground chamber. During the setup, Tracy decided to head back toward the cave entrance alone. Perhaps she needed something from their vehicles, or maybe the underground environment was making her uncomfortable. Whatever her reason, she made a fatal mistake. She left without taking any light source. Her friends were busy setting up the party, music playing and conversations flowing. In the energetic atmosphere, nobody immediately noticed her departure. When they did realize she was gone, they assumed she had taken a flashlight and was safely making her way back to the entrance. Cave darkness is absolute. Unlike outdoor nighttime, where some light exists, caves offer complete blackness. Without illumination, navigation becomes impossible, and familiar passages turn deadly. Tracy attempted to navigate back through the cave system in total darkness. The limestone floor was uneven and treacherous. As Tracy attempted to move across the cave system in complete darkness, she lost her footing on the uneven limestone floor. She slipped, her foot catching on a stone protrusion, and began tumbling through the darkness. What Tracy couldn't see, and what made her fall catastrophic, was that she had stumbled directly into one of the most dangerous features of Martin Cave, an 11-foot, around 3.4 meters, vertical drop-off. This section of the cave required careful navigation, even with proper lighting, as the limestone floor suddenly disappeared into a lower chamber. Her slip had sent her tumbling over the edge of this precipice. The fall was devastating. 11 feet onto solid limestone was more than enough to cause severe trauma. Tracy went down, striking the rocky floor below with crushing force. The sound of her fall cut through the party atmosphere. The hollow crash of her body hitting limestone echoed off the cave walls, instantly silencing the celebration. Music stopped, conversations ceased, and everyone froze as the terrible sound reverberated through the passages. They abandoned their party setup and frantically searched for the source of the sound. When they found Tracy at the base of the drop-off, the scene was nightmarish. She lay unconscious on the limestone floor with severe head trauma. Most alarmingly, she was bleeding from her ears, a sign of significant brain injury and possible skull fracture. Her friends immediately recognized the gravity Head injuries of this magnitude required immediate medical attention, but they were deep underground with no cell service. The party supplies that had seemed important moments before were forgotten as they faced a life-threatening emergency. One person remained with Tracy, while others rushed to the cave entrance to summon help. The jovial party atmosphere had become panic and desperation as they realized how unprepared they were for this emergency. The call reached the National Park Service as the cave was in the current river corridor. Ranger Kelly Knutson received the report and understood the complexity immediately. Knutson radioed for additional help from other rangers and requested an ambulance. However, standard ambulances would be useless until Tracy could be evacuated from the cave system. As an emergency medical technician, Knutson knew time was critical with severe head trauma. The bleeding from Tracy's ears indicated potentially life-threatening brain injuries that could worsen rapidly. Every minute reduced her chances of recovery. Knutson responded by boat via the current river to reach the area quickly. The waterway now served as a crucial emergency highway. Tracy's friends who had stayed on the surface guided him to the cave entrance. Upon arrival, Knutson organized the rescue operation. Additional rangers and park personnel were bringing specialized cave rescue equipment and medical supplies. The narrow entrance and 228 meters, 750 feet, distance to the victim, presented significant logistical challenges. And Knutson entered the cave system following the route Tracy's friends had marked. The contrast was stark. Party supplies scattered throughout the passage while he carried life-saving medical equipment. Empty coolers, abandoned snacks, and a silent speaker served as grim reminders of how quickly celebration had turned to tragedy. When Knutson reached Tracy, her condition was grave. She remained unconscious, still bleeding from her ears. He immediately began administering oxygen and conducting a preliminary injury assessment. The long fall onto solid limestone had clearly caused severe head trauma, and possible spinal injuries meant any movement had to be carefully controlled. Knutson directed Tracy's friends to keep her completely still while he radioed for additional medical personnel. The underground environment complicated every aspect of emergency care. Radio communications were limited. Lighting was inadequate for proper medical assessment, and the patient needed transport through narrow, uneven passages. The rescue required careful orchestration between multiple teams. Rangers and park personnel established an evacuation route from Tracy's location to the cave entrance. They brought additional lighting, medical equipment, and specialized stretchers designed for cave rescues. Preparing Tracy for transport was painstaking. Her potential spinal injuries required careful securing to a backboard before any movement. In the confined cave passage, this procedure was significantly more complex than on the surface. Every action had to be deliberate and coordinated to avoid additional trauma. Cave evacuation required multiple personnel working in relays. The narrow passages and uneven terrain made traditional stretcher carrying impossible. Rescue personnel carefully passed her from team to team, maintaining spinal immobilization throughout. As Tracy reached the cave entrance, the next rescue phase was already in motion. Knutson had coordinated helicopter transport to advanced medical facilities. However, the forested terrain around Martin Cave provided no suitable helicopter landing zone near the entrance. The solution used the current river as a transportation corridor. A park boat stood ready to transport Tracy to a nearby gravel bar where a helicopter could safely land. This improvised helipad allowed rapid transfer from ground rescue to air medical transport. The boat ride was brief but critical. Tracy's condition remained unstable, and Knutson continued emergency medical care during water transport. The current river, normally used for recreation, now served as a lifeline. The helicopter crew was standing by at the gravel bar landing zone. Tracy was quickly transferred to the aircraft where flight medics took over her care. The helicopter's advanced life support capabilities provided higher-level medical intervention than possible in the cave. Tracy was initially flown to Ozarks Medical Center in West Plains, the nearest trauma facility. However, her head injuries required even more specialized care. She was transferred to St. John's Hospital in Springfield, where neurosurgical specialists could address her brain trauma. At St. John's Hospital, Tracy underwent emergency surgery. The surgical team worked to relieve intracranial pressure and repair brain tissue damage. Her condition was listed as critical, though doctors were cautiously optimistic about her survival chances. The entire rescue operation took just over 2 hours from emergency call to hospital arrival. This rapid response was crucial, given her injuries, and demonstrated effective coordination, even in challenging cave environments. As Tracy began recovery in intensive care, her birthday celebration on August 10, 2002, became a lesson on how caves can turn dangerous when safety precautions are ignored.